I filed for Social Security at 62 years old. According to just about every financial advisor, retirement planner, and personal finance blog on the internet, that makes me either financially illiterate or just plain foolish. The conventional wisdom says wait until full retirement age, or better yet, wait until 70 and maximize your benefit. And look, I understand that advice. I spent 30 years as an elder law attorney. I've run the numbers more times than I can count. I know what the calculators say, but here's what those calculators don't know. They don't know your life. They don't know your health. They don't know what keeps you up at 3 in the morning. And they certainly don't know what happened to my client Robert Brennan. Robert walked into my office in Asheville on a Thursday afternoon in April of 2018. He was 61 years old, about to turn 62 in 3 months. He was a maintenance supervisor at a textile mill outside of Marion, North Carolina, one of the last ones still operating in the region. He'd worked there for 37 years, started right out of high school, married his high school sweetheart Linda 2 years later. They had 2 daughters, both grown, both living out of state. Robert had always been the planner in the family. He had a notebook, one of those old-fashioned composition notebooks with the black and white marbled cover, and inside were handwritten tables showing his Social Security earnings year by year, his projected benefit at 62 versus full retirement age versus 70, his monthly budget, his mortgage payoff date, everything. He told me he wanted to wait until 67, his full retirement age, to claim Social Security. He'd done the math. At 62, his benefit would be around $1,400 a month. At 67, it would jump to $2,000. That's a $600 difference every single month for the rest of his life. Over 20 years, that's $144,000. Over 30 years, it's over $200,000. The numbers were clear. Waiting was the smart move, but Robert wasn't there to ask me if he should wait. He already knew he should wait. He was there because Linda was telling him to file early, and he wanted me to explain to her why she was wrong. Linda had been an aide at an assisted living facility for 19 years. She'd watched a lot of residents come and go, and what she'd seen, what she tried to explain to Robert, was that a lot of people plan to wait until 67 or 70 to claim Social Security, and a lot of those people never make it that far. Or they make it, but by then their health is so compromised that the extra money doesn't buy them what they thought it would. She wasn't being morbid, she was being realistic. She'd seen too many men Robert's age, men who worked physical jobs their whole lives, men who thought they were healthy decline fast once they stopped working. Robert didn't want to hear it. He showed me his health records. His blood pressure was good, his cholesterol was managed, he didn't smoke, he walked 2 miles most mornings. His father had lived to 79. He had every reason to believe he'd live into his 80s, maybe longer. Waiting until 67 made sense. Waiting until 70 made even more sense if they could manage it. He wanted me to run the numbers for Linda, show her the break-even analysis, prove that filing early was leaving money on the table. So I did. I walked them both through it. I showed them that if Robert lived to average life expectancy, around 78 for a man his age, he'd come out slightly ahead by waiting until full retirement age. If he lived into his mid-80s, waiting until 70 would be the clear winner. The math was on Robert's side, and I told them that. I also told them what I tell everyone: the math is only half the equation. The other half is life, and nobody gets a guarantee on that part. Robert decided to wait. They left my office that day with a plan. He'd keep working until 67. Linda would cut back her hours at 65. They'd live on his paycheck and her part-time income until he filed for Social Security at full retirement age. Then they'd have breathing room. Maybe take that trip to Yellowstone they'd been talking about for 20 years. Maybe help their daughters with down payments. Maybe just sleep better at night knowing they'd maximize their benefit. 14 months later, Robert had a heart attack at work. Massive. He collapsed in the break room during his lunch shift. They got him to the hospital, but the damage was severe. He survived, but his heart function was permanently compromised. He went on disability. He could no longer work. And because he hadn't filed for Social Security yet, his household income dropped to almost nothing while they waited for disability approval. That process took 7 months. 7 months of living on Linda's part-time paycheck and whatever they could pull from savings they'd been planning to use for something else. Robert eventually got approved for Social Security disability, which automatically converted to retirement benefits when he turned full retirement age. But those 14 months he worked past 62, the 14 months he spent trying to maximize his benefit, became 14 months he didn't get paid at all when his health collapsed. And the money he would have received if he'd filed at 62, that money was gone. You don't get it back. There's no retroactive payment for the decision to wait. I saw Robert one more time after that. About a year later, he and Linda came in to update some paperwork. He looked older, moved slower. He told me he wished he'd listened to Linda. He said, "Hal, I had the math right, but I had the assumptions wrong. I assumed I'd get to 67 healthy. That was the whole plan, and that assumption cost us." Robert's story stayed with me. But what really changed my thinking wasn't just Robert, it was the pattern. Over the next 2 years, I started paying closer attention to the clients who came into my office planning to wait versus the clients who filed early. And I started noticing something the spreadsheets never capture. The ones who filed early weren't necessarily making a mistake. They were making a different calculation. They were weighing certainty against optimization. And for a lot of them, certainty won. I'm going to walk you through 3 specific situations I saw during that period that made me rethink everything I thought I knew about when to file for Social Security. And then I'm going to tell you why I filed at 62 myself. But first, I need you to understand something about how we talk about Social Security timing in this country, because the conversation is rigged from the start. Every article you read, every retirement calculator you use, every financial planner you talk to, they all start from the same assumption. They assume you're going to live to average life expectancy or beyond. They assume your health will hold. They assume you'll keep working if you want to. They assume your job will still be there. They assume your spouse's health will hold. They assume no financial emergencies. They assume no caregiving crises. They assume no forced early retirement. And then, based on all those assumptions, they run the math and tell you that waiting is the smart move. But here's the thing about assumptions. They're just guesses we pretend are facts. And when you're making a decision about when to file for Social Security, you're not betting on a spreadsheet. You're betting on your life. And your life doesn't care what the average outcome is. Your life is going to do exactly one thing, and you don't know what that thing is until it's too late to change your filing decision. Now let me tell you about Margaret Ann Holloway. Margaret was 63 when she came to see me in October of 2019. She'd worked as a public school teacher in Buncombe County for 31 years. She had a pension, not a large one, but enough to cover her basics, about $1,800 a month. Her Social Security benefit at full retirement age would have been around $1,900. At 63, it would be about $1,650. She was trying to decide whether to file now or wait 4 more years. Margaret's husband died in 2016. Lung cancer. He'd been a smoker for 40 years, quit at 55, but the damage was done. When he passed, Margaret was 60 years old. She kept teaching because she loved it and because she needed the health insurance. But by 63, she was tired. The job had changed. More testing, more administrative pressure, less actual teaching. She wanted out. Her plan was to retire from teaching at the end of the school year and file for Social Security at 63. Her financial advisor told her she was making a mistake. He showed her the numbers. If she waited until 67, her benefit would be about $2,400 a month. That's $750 more per month than filing at 63. Over 20 years, that's $180,000. He told her she should substitute teach for 4 more years, live on her pension, and wait to file, maximize the benefit. That was the smart play, but Margaret had a different set of numbers in her head. Her mother had died at 71, her aunt died at 68. Her older sister was diagnosed with early-onset Alzheimer's at 64 and was in a memory care facility by 67. Margaret's family history wasn't good, and she wasn't interested in optimizing for a future she might not see. She was interested in the next 5 years, maybe 10 if she was lucky. She wanted to travel while she could still remember where she'd been. She wanted to spend time with her grandkids while they still wanted to spend time with her. She wanted to live her life now, not in some theoretical future where everything works out perfectly. Margaret filed at 63. She took the reduced benefit, and for the next 3 years, she did exactly what she wanted. She took her grandson to Washington, D.C. She went to Italy with her best friend from college. She volunteered at the Literacy Council. She gardened, she read, she lived a life she loved. And then in November of 2022, she was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, stage 4. She died 4 months later. She was 66 years old. If Margaret had listened to her financial advisor and waited until 67, she would have received 0 Social Security checks. 0. She would have spent 4 more years substitute teaching, postponing the life she wanted to live, optimizing for a future that never came. Instead, she filed at 63 and collected Social Security for 3 years and 2 months. That's 38 months. At $1,650 per month. That's $62,700 she received that she wouldn't have received if she'd waited. Was it the optimal financial decision according to the math? No. Was it the right decision for her life? Absolutely. Now here's the one that really got to me. Dennis Michael Corman. Dennis came to see me in August of 2020. He was 62 years old, born in May of 1958. He'd been a long-haul truck driver for 34 years. Started driving when he was 28 after a few years working in a warehouse. He loved the road, loved the independence, but by 62 his body was done, his back was a mess, his knees were shot, he had diabetes that was getting harder to manage on the road. His doctor told him he needed to stop driving, not in a year, not in 6 months. Now, Dennis's Social Security benefit at 62 was about $1,700 per month. At full retirement age 66 and 8 months for someone born in 1958, it would be about $2,400. That's a $700 difference. His wife Charlene was 58, still working as a dental hygienist, bringing in about $32,000 a year after taxes. They had a mortgage, about 9 years left on it. They had some savings, maybe $30,000. Not nothing, but not enough to coast on for 4.5 years while Dennis waited to file. Every financial calculator told Dennis to wait, delay if possible. The longer he waited, the more he'd get. And $700 a month adds up. Over 20 years, that's $168,000. But Dennis couldn't wait. His doctor was clear, keep driving and you're risking permanent disability. And if Dennis went on disability, the process could take a year or more, and there was no guarantee he'd get approved. His back problems were documented. But disability claims are notoriously hard to win unless you're truly unable to do any work at all. So Dennis filed at 62, he took the reduced benefit, and people told him he made a mistake. His brother-in-law told him he should have just toughed it out a few more years. A guy at his church told him he was throwing money away. But here's what Dennis understood that a lot of people don't. Filing for Social Security isn't just about maximizing your lifetime benefit. It's about maintaining your life while you still have one to maintain. Dennis stopped driving in September of 2020. He started collecting Social Security in October. That $1,700 a month, combined with Charlene's income, was enough to keep their household afloat. They didn't lose the house. They didn't burn through their savings. They didn't go into debt. And most importantly, Dennis didn't destroy his body trying to hold out for a bigger check 4 years later. Now, 3 years after filing, Dennis is 65. His back is still bad, but it's not worse. His diabetes is under better control because he's not eating truck stop food 3 meals a day. He's not rich, but he's stable. And if he lives to 85, will he have left some money on the table by filing at 62 instead of waiting? Sure, maybe $150,000 over the full span. But if he'd kept driving and blown out his back completely, or had a diabetic crisis on the road, or couldn't get disability approved and spent a year with no income, how much would that have cost him? This is what I mean when I say the math only tells you half the story. The math assumes you have the luxury of waiting. It assumes your health holds. It assumes your job holds. It assumes no crisis forces your hand. But for a whole lot of people, those assumptions don't hold. And when they don't, filing early isn't a mistake. It's a life raft. So why did I file at 62? Let me tell you exactly what went into that decision, because it wasn't impulsive and it wasn't based on fear. It was based on 30 years of watching real people make this choice and live with the consequences. I turned 62 in September of 2025. My full retirement age is 67. If I had waited until 67, my benefit would have been about $3,100 a month. At 62, I'm collecting $2,170. That's a difference of about $930 per month. Over 20 years, that's $223,000 I'm theoretically leaving on the table. My financial planner showed me those numbers. He wasn't wrong. But here's what he couldn't show me: a guarantee that I'd be healthy and functional at 67. A guarantee that Kathy would be healthy. A guarantee that my mother, who has early-stage Alzheimer's and is 84 years old, wouldn't need more care than we'd planned for. A guarantee that the future would cooperate with the spreadsheet. I filed early for 3 reasons. First, my father died at 79. After spending his last decade managing SOPD from 38 years of industrial exposure at the Alcoa plant, he waited until 65 to retire. He got 14 years. Some of those years were good. A lot of them were hard. I watched him struggle to breathe doing things he used to love. I watched him skip trips because he didn't have the stamina, and I remember thinking he earned that Social Security for 38 years, and by the time he got to enjoy it, his body was already failing him. I don't want that to be my story. Second, Kathy and I want to travel while we can still walk without assistance and remember where we've been. We want to take Nora to the Smoky Mountains before she's too old to think it's magic. We want to visit Ellie in Atlanta without it being a production. We want to do those things now, not in 5 years when we might not be able to. The extra $900 a month I'd get by waiting isn't worth more to me than the experiences I can have right now with the people I love. And third, and this is the one nobody talks about, I've seen too many people wait for the bigger check and then spend that bigger check on medical bills, nursing home care, and expenses they never planned for. The idea that you're going to get to 70 and just enjoy that maximized benefit in peace, for some people, sure, but for a whole lot of people, that extra money goes straight into managing the decline that comes with age. I'm not being pessimistic, I'm being realistic. I'd rather have a smaller check now while I'm healthy than a bigger check later when I might not be able to use it the way I want to. Now let me be very clear about something. I am not telling you to file at 62. I'm telling you that filing at 62 was the right decision for me based on my specific health, my family situation, my financial position, and my priorities. Your situation is different. Maybe you're in excellent health with a family history of longevity. Maybe you're still working a job you love, and the income is good. Maybe you don't have the savings to supplement a reduced benefit. Maybe your spouse is younger and you need to think about survivor benefits. All of those factors matter. This is not one size fits all. But here's what I want you to take away from this. The decision about when to file for Social Security is not a math problem, it's a life problem, and the right answer for your life might not be the answer that maximizes your lifetime benefit. The right answer might be the one that maximizes your life right now, while you still have the health and the energy and the time to live it. If you're sitting here at 62 trying to decide whether to file, ask yourself these questions. Can you afford to wait, or does waiting create financial stress that harms your quality of life today? Is your health good, or are there warning signs that your body might not cooperate with your 10-year plan? Do you have family history that suggests longevity, or does your family tend to decline earlier than average? Are you still working because you want to, or because you feel like you have to in order to justify waiting? And most importantly, what do you want to do with the next 5 years of your life? And does waiting to file help you do those things or prevent you from doing them? Those are not rhetorical questions. Those are the questions that should drive your decision, not the break-even analysis, not the maximized benefit chart, not what some financial advisor who's never met your family tells you is optimal. I filed at 62 and I'm glad I did. I'm using that money right now to live a life I'm proud of. I'm traveling with Kathy. I'm spending time with my granddaughter. I'm supporting my mother. I'm funding the work I care about. And maybe I'll live to 90 and regret leaving $200,000 on the table. Or maybe I'll live to 75 and be grateful I didn't spend my 60s waiting for a future that never came. I don't know, neither do you, and that's exactly the point. If this video gave you a different way to think about your own filing decision, I'd appreciate it if you shared it with someone who's wrestling with the same choice.